basically Ivorian authorities looking at the state of their balance sheet and saying for now they won't be able to honor those coupon repayments. How dire is the situation?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think the 2011 macroeconomic environment is going to deteriorate. Growth is likely to be in negative territory. The government expects a contraction of about 6.3%. We think actually it might be a little bit less. On the fiscal side, the fiscal deficit is going to widen. So, yes, there will be issues. Whether that justifies actually a default is another problem.
I mean, obviously, Samir, there have been extenuating circumstances, a political impasse that lasted most of the first half of this year, infrastructure being damaged because of this political situation, because of some kind of conflict that ensued. But there are those who believe that actually the Ivorian government is in a position to meet some of the coupon repayments valued at $29 million. What's your view?
Well, actually, I'm in that camp. I think that, yes, the financial situation has worsened. But that said, you know, we're still talking about a fiscal deficit of probably 5.5 to 7% of GDP this year. So it's not really the end of the world. I mean, just to compare, you know, a country like Ghana had a fiscal deficit of about 15% of GDP in 2009, and yet it was able to service its Eurobond payments.
Yeah, but Ghana has had a functioning economy, whereas Cote d'Ivoire has had some problems. Will bondholders accept a proposal to begin some of the payments in 2012?
Well, I think they are increasingly frustrated, but they will probably wait because, you know, frankly, at this stage, if they want to accelerate and, you know, start some regulatory process against the country, that's going to take forever. So they'll probably wait for 5 or 6 months and see what the Ivorians come back with.
If the Ivorians were to shift their expenditure priorities, considering the fact that they've got a bit of a financing gap of minus 5.4% of GDP, what is it that they need to reorganize within the economy?
Well, actually, first of all, I think that deficit is a bit overstated because it implies a drop in revenue by about 33%. But actually, if you look at cocoa production this year, it's sizably up versus 2010, and that's surprising. But you know, there's a very good cocoa crop in West Africa, and secondly, the cocoa exports in the country, yes, have stopped in the first half of the year, but they're likely to actually resume in the second half. So frankly, we think that it's possible that the Ivorian government could have even more revenue than currently assumed. The other thing is that if you want to repay your London debt club, then you can prioritize your expenditure. And frankly, you know, it's just a marginal amount. I mean, we're talking about $29 million for December and June, so 58 as of now, and probably 87 if they don't pay the December 11 coupon. I mean, I'm sure they can find this amount somewhere.
All right, so a good cocoa output, but they're also talking to the IMF, Samir, about an extended credit facility. They're also speaking to the African Development Bank and other development finance institutions. There is a sense that Alassane Ouattara has sufficient clout and credibility, so donors will respond. But are they prepared to take on a credit facility, for instance, 3 years? Are they prepared to incur quite a bit of risk for Cote d'Ivoire?
No, I think they will. I mean, the IMF has already announced that it's going to disburse $129 million immediately. So I think that's on track. Then the AFDB has already made some commitments. So did the World Bank. So I think on the bilateral and multilateral front, things are going to move on. But I think, you know, that raises a conceptual issue. I mean, yes, you can develop the country, at least stabilize the country with IMF, World Bank, and Paris Club funds for 1 year or two. But in the long run, if the president wants to transform Ivory Coast into an emerging market, then he's going to have to come back to the global financial markets. And that's where, you know, the fact that Ivory Coast has defaulted will become an issue.
I mean, I mentioned and I asked you earlier on what their expenditure priorities will be. Let's talk about a blueprint for this economy. Emerging markets, some would say, you know what, it has great potential because despite the political situation, the infrastructure in Cote d'Ivoire is set to be very, very good. And just basic structuring of the economy in terms of growth nodes, ports, that sort of thing. Apparently things work really well despite what's happened politically.
Yeah, well, that's because actually, you know, there was no civil war per se. I mean, the fighting lasted, you know, for a week or two. So the infrastructure was not destroyed, you know, as it was the case, let's say, in Liberia or Sierra Leone 10 years ago. And on top of that, the Ivory Coast is still the top cocoa producer in the world. It has some coffee, some oil, not a lot, but enough to actually sustain the budget. So not only do you have the infrastructure, but you know, the export base is relatively diversified.